Before a child learns how to read, write, or calculate, or navigate the world, they are learning something much deeper. They are learning what love looks like. They are learning what respect sounds like. They are learning how adults handle anger, conflict, responsibility, forgiveness, and mistakes. They are learning what they are worth. Children are always learning. They learn from what we say, they learn from what we do, they learn from what we tolerate, they learn from what we excuse, they even learn from our silence. Whether we intend to teach them or not, we are teaching them every single day. Recently, I asked around 25 adults between the ages of 34 and 46 a simple but deeply revealing question. What unhealthy lessons did you learn from your parents or adults who raised you? The responses were heartbreaking. The names and ages you are about to hear have been changed to protect the identity of the participants. While no single participant represents one complete story, every lesson you are about to hear came from a real person. As you listen, remember this. Children do not only learn from instructions, they learn from observation, they learn from patterns, and they learn from the environment they grow up in. These are some of the lessons these individuals learned. Aisha at 44 shared, I learned that it's okay to talk to boys as long as nobody finds out. I learned that it is okay to make adult jokes. I learned that it is okay to be loud, angry, and disrespectful. I learned that it was acceptable for siblings to hurt each other, hold grudges, and go years without speaking, instead of learning that family relationships require accountability, compassion, forgiveness, and the willingness to heal. Sarah at 39 said, I learned that it is okay to behave nicely depending on my mood. I learned that it is also okay to pretend to be nice only when I wanted a favor. She said, I learned that it is okay to ask people for money and then when they ask for it back, to be disrespectful. Fatima at 39 said, I learned that it is okay to take money and not return it. I learned that it is okay to manage my finances badly. I learned that it is okay not to choose my own family first. Alicia at 41 said, I learned that it is okay to be mean to my siblings and my own children. I learned that it is okay to be nice to one part of the family and adults while being disrespectful to the other. I also learned that it is okay to be an unsafe adult. Umaima at 38 said that I learned that it is okay to mock other people. I learned that it is okay to use bad language. I learned that it is okay to throw things when you're angry. I learned that people who struggled with English, communication, or teaching skills were people to mock rather than people to understand. I learned that someone's worth was measured by their status, their wealth, and what they could display to others, not by their character, kindness, or effort. Mena at 40 shared, I learned that it is okay to lie and be dramatic. I learned that it is okay to be dramatic and to lie about taking one's own life. I learned that it is okay to play the victim. I learned that humor was measured by how much damage it could do. The bigger the reaction, tears, anger, embarrassment, or someone finally leaving to protect themselves, the more successful the joke was considered. If these are the lessons our children are absorbing, then we should not be surprised when they grow up into adults who struggle with trust, relationships, responsibility, emotional regulation, and self-worth. Because children do not become what we tell them to become, they become what we repeatedly show them. And this is only the beginning. As the conversations continued, the pattern became clearer. Many of these adults did not just learn unhealthy behaviors, they learned unhealthy beliefs about love, safety, relationships, responsibility, and even about themselves. These are the voices of more participants. Madiha at 35 shared, I learned that it is important never to take responsibility for the wrong I have done. I learned that it is okay to think only about myself and not about the consequences that my action will have on other people. I learned that it is okay to hide from your consequences and run away. Zainab at 44 said, I learned that when something goes wrong in life, I can pop a sleeping pill and hide instead of dealing with it. She also shared, I learned that I do not have to be an adult. And she also shared, I learned that it is okay not to be responsible. Someone at 37 shared, I learned that it is okay to be rude, loud, and angry all the time. So every member in the family is petrified of talking to you. I learned that it is okay not to take responsibility for my choice of words, my tone of voice, or how I carry myself. She also mentioned, I learned that it is okay not to follow the commands of Allah. I learned that it is okay not to pray. You can if you feel like it, but you don't have to. I learned that it is okay because it is all optional and not truly required as long as I have peers and fakirs. Mariam at 45 said, I learned that humor is only funny when it involves mocking someone. I learned that rude humor is the same as funny humor. I learned that the more I disrespect someone and cross their boundaries, the funnier and more macho I am. Samia at 34 says, I learned that there were no safe adults. I learned that I cannot go to a family member without risking my information being used against me or shared in harmful ways. I learned that information should be used strategically for personal protection or personal benefit. Noor at 46 said, I learned that I am only valued as long as I have something to give. I learned that calm is not real or sustainable. I learned that peace exists only outside the house. As I listened to these stories, one thing became painfully clear. None of these adults were born believing these things. No child enters the world believing that respect is optional, that love has to be earned, that emotions are weakness, or that they have no value unless they have something to offer. They learned these lessons, and if unhealthy beliefs can be learned, then healthy beliefs can be taught. That is why parenting matters. That is why the adults surrounding a child matter, because every interaction is shaping the beliefs they will carry into adulthood. As the conversations continued, a pattern began to emerge. Many of these adults did not just learn unhealthy behaviors, they learned unhealthy beliefs about love, safety, relationships, and even about themselves. These are the voices of 6 more participants. Asma at 41 said, I learned that there is no real possibility of creating peace, safety, or emotional stability within the family unit. She shared, I learned that if I mismanage my money, someone will always come to help me. She said, I learned that I can spend other people's money and not think about budgeting or prioritizing sensible spending. Summer at 44 said, I learned that I would never be good enough. I learned that I was the reason my parents were miserable. I learned what it feels like to be placed in the middle of my parents' marriage. Whenever they fought, I was expected to prepare my father's clothes, serve his meals, and look after him. Somehow that made my mother angry with me as though I were in competition with her. Najma at 36 says, I learned that playing the victim card always works. I learned that there is no calm, mature conversations at home. Someone is always manipulating, blaming, or making themselves the victim. I learned that it is acceptable to threaten other people with self-harm. As children, we watched our father threaten to shoot himself or hurt himself. Just imagine what that teaches a child about safety, love, and conflict. Ikra at 45 said, I learned that it is okay to use other people's secrets against them. I learned that it is okay to emotionally harm or pressure people through emotional blackmail. I learned that it is okay to pretend to care when you genuinely do not. Yumna at 43 said, I learned that we must only think about ourselves and not consider those we love as well. I learned that the only person I have to think about is me. Nobody else matters, not my children, not my parents, not my family. I learned that it is okay to lie. I learned that it was acceptable to look down on others and carry a sense of superiority and arrogance. I learned that arrogance could be mistaken for confidence, and that judging people from a place of pride was normal. As the conversations continued, we reached some of the most painful reflections. Some lessons shape behavior, others shape identity. When a child repeatedly hears that they are the problem, that they are a burden, that they are responsible for the unhappiness of the adults around them, those words do not disappear with childhood. They become an inner voice. And unless they are challenged, the voice often follows them into adulthood. Khadija at 44 said, I learned that I was the reason why my parents had a miserable life and why they could not succeed in anything. I learned that I was the worst child they had, and I truly believed in my bones that they could, given the choice, leave me somewhere else and bring a child more liking to the way they wanted. I learned that I had no right to be alive and that I should not expect anything good in life. Sana at 44 said, I learned that if I died or simply ceased to exist, it would make all of their problems go away. I learned that I cannot do anything right. I learned that I am a failure. If you've listened to this series so far, you may have noticed something. Many of these adults didn't just learn unhealthy behaviors, they learned who they believed they were. These final testaments are perhaps the most painful of all. Amina, 39, said, I learned that I was a punishment for my parents and that my life was not worth their time or love. I learned that nothing I ever did was enough. I learned that just because I thought I was pretty, life was never going to be difficult. In fact, on numerous occasions, I remember my mother cursing me about this particular thing. Sadaf at 47 said, I learned that I deserved a life so difficult that I sometimes wished and prayed that it would end. I learned that Allah was angry with me because I was absolutely useless. I learned that every child and every other human being was better than I was. Samina at 46 said, I learned that there are no fixed morals in life. I learned that all morals can be twisted and turned depending on my benefit. I learned that there are no principles I need to live up to, no matter how difficult life gets. Mahnoor at 44 said, I learned that the more religious you are, the angrier you must be. I learned that I can allow minors and children to do things that Allah, their parents, and the society have deemed unsafe. I learned that I was a slut. Sadia at 45 says, I learned that I had no character. I learned that there was no good in me worth saving. I learned that because my parents didn't choose me, I didn't deserve to live with dignity or respect. I learned that it was perfectly acceptable to watch pornography as long as nobody found out. I learned that secrecy could make something wrong feel acceptable, and that hiding a behavior mattered more than questioning the behavior itself. Lena at 38 said, I learned that I was a mistake. I learned that I was the reason my parents could never live a full life. I learned that commitment was never the goal. I learned never to be grateful. I learned never to respect my partner. Zara at 42 said, I learned to complain. I learned to compare my life with people who had completely different parents and completely different circumstances. I learned nothing about healthy deal breakers. I learned that I was never taught healthy ways to self-soothe. I watched the caregivers in my life deal with problems by taking large amounts of sleeping pills, sleeping through the pain, and then waking up the next day pretending everything was fine. I learned that difficult emotions were something to escape from rather than process. Because I never learned healthy ways to comfort myself, I later struggled with addiction and with finding unhealthy ways to soothe my pain. I was trying to cope with emotions I had never been taught how to handle. 73 lessons, not from a textbook, not from a school, not from a training course. They were learned at home. They were learned from parents, caregivers, relatives, and the adults who surrounded these children. Children do not simply hear our words, they absorb our beliefs. They watch how we manage anger. They watch how we resolve conflict. They watch how we speak about ourselves, about Allah, about other people, about money, about marriage, about responsibility, and about love. Long before they know how to explain life, they are already building a picture of what life is supposed to look like. Some adults spend decades unlearning lessons they never should have been taught in the first place. This is why parenting matters. This is why emotionally safe adults matter. This is why our words matter, because every interaction teaches a child something. The question is never whether children are learning. The question is, what are they learning from us?